Well, I don't need to be real close here. Yeah, we have it up here. Yeah. Okay, so Jim's here. So we can get him first. Yeah. No. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second meeting of October. We'll call this meeting to order, but before we get too far involved here, I would ask council, and I guess if they so wish, we'll have a moment of silent reflection. Okay, thank you. All right. First item, is there any additions to the agenda tonight? Dan? No? Okay, so first item up is that Municipality of West Perth accept the agenda as presented. We have a move and seconder for that, please. Anna Marie and Murray, all those in favor? That's carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with anything tonight? If so, you can always declare it, find you're getting yourself into hot water later on. The consent agenda, there's a number of items there. As a matter of fact, there are 8 items there. Is there anything there that anybody would like further explanation on or want it pulled and dealt with separately? And I don't see any hands going up this time either. So a motion would be in order that we accept the consent agenda 4.1 to 4.8 for information and the minutes of the October 3rd, 2022 regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Harold, seconded by Councillor Dale. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So the next item then is that the Municipality of West Perth adjourn at 7:03 for the purpose of a public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. Moved by Councillor Vink and seconded by Councillor Tam. All those in favor? That is carried. Now, with council's permission, I would like to switch the applications around. And we'll deal with the Spence one first, and then we'll deal with the one in Dublin second, if that's okay. So moving on here, the right sheet here now. This is a public meeting, and it has been called to order at it's actually 7:04 now. The public meeting is being held in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest by any member of council? I will ask our clerk, Clerk Hobson, for the purpose of this public meeting.
Good evening, council. The purpose of this public meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth is to review the application for a proposed amendment to Bylaw 100-1998, the zoning bylaw of the Municipality of West Perth, and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regards to the application. Council may not make a decision on the application at this public meeting. Based on recommendations and information received at this public meeting, council will make a decision at a future regular council meeting. If any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on this application, they are to provide their name and mailing address and email to me, the clerk, via email at clerk@westperth.com. Person or public body may appeal a decision if they have made an oral submission at this public meeting or a written submission to council prior to the passing of the amending bylaw. Notice was given by mail to all landowners within 120 meters of the land affected by the proposed amending bylaw and those agencies as prescribed by regulation. The sign advertising tonight's meeting was posted on the properties on September 27, 2022. Correspondence received following the posting of this notice will be presented by the planners.
Okay, this is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment. The application B14-11 2022 was initiated by William D. Spence and James R. Spence. The proposed amendment affects the property described as Lot 21, Plan 366, known as 197 and 199 Colton Drive, Mitchell Ward, in the municipality of West Perth. I will now call upon Jerica Gilbert, and she's up there ready to go. She's our planner for the municipality of West Perth to review the application. Jerica?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. So this is zoning bylaw amendment application 11-2022. As we heard, the applicants are William and Jane Spence, and it's at 197 and 199 Colton Drive, Mitchell, which is actually just up the road from here a couple minutes. The area that we're contemplating tonight, it's residential. Mostly low density zoning, but there is plenty of higher density areas as well in the area, including an apartment block. So the reason we're here tonight is because earlier this year, there was an application for consent, which means to sever the property into two for the purpose of creating a new lot. So the lot on the corner to be retained is going to be one part, and then the lot that says to be severed will be the second lot. Now, I know that council is well aware with what legal nonconforming means, but just for the benefit of the public, the reason why we're here is because the current zoning, which is Mitchell Residential Low Density Zone 1, or R1, I'm going to call it from now on, doesn't permit semi-detached dwellings. There is a legally existing semi-detached dwelling on this lot that existed prior to the bylaw coming into effect for the area, which means while it's legally existing right now, because we're changing something under the Planning Act, we're adding in a new property line. Part of the assessment for that is that the new lots have to conform to the zoning bylaw. And right now they don't. So what we're going to do basically tonight is change the zoning to reflect what the existing use is. So from R1 to Mitchell Residential Medium Density Zone 3 or R3. And then we're also going to look at technically three site-specific amendments. One is to recognize a lower lot area for the parcel on the corner, which will be going from 490 square meters, which is required by the zoning bylaw, to 374.1. And then also a reduction in the front yard setback. So how far the building is set back from the front yard is supposed to be 6 meters, and we're going to 4.9 meters. Planning has assessed these changes, and we believe that they are in conformity with the existing plans that we have, and that the amendment makes sense. The consent received provisional approval on July 12th, 2022. The applicants have conditions that they need to fulfill before that new parcel is created, and this is one of them. Do I have control? Oh, I don't have control. So just so everyone knows, this is a picture of the property that was taken a few weeks ago. Pretty basic and straightforward application. Myself as the planner, I haven't received any correspondence from any adjacent landowners. And I would ask that council consider recommending, I would consider recommending approval to council for this one. If there's any questions or comments from either council or the public, I'd be happy to hear them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerica. So at this time, I guess I will ask if there's anybody present tonight that wishes to speak in support of the application other than the applicant. Is there anybody here tonight in opposition? Jim, do you want to say anything as the applicant at this particular time? Okay, thank you. Any comments from members of council? Okay, then I would like to thank those in attendance for their comments. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment, the notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act and a 20-day appeal period to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So thank you very much. You're done, Jim.
Thank you.
And Jerica. All right, on to the next one. And I would like to thank all those in attendance for their comments or future comments. Public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment. This application D141621 was initiated by Bartels Environmental Services. The proposed amendment affects the property described as West Park Lot 13, Concession 1 of the Hibbert Ward, Municipality of West Perth, 3903, Line 34, Highway 8. And I will now call upon Susanna Reed, planner for the Municipality of West Perth, to review the application. Susanna?
Thank you very much, Mayor Mackenzie, and good evening, Council. And good evening to the public. This is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment to consider rezoning property outside of Dublin. The applicant is Bartels Environmental Services, and Dave Barrett is the agent acting for the file. Ron Ninehouse, the Director of Operations for Bartels, is here tonight and is available to speak to Council with regards to the application as well. So if we move to the next slide, this is the location of the property. Is 415 meters east of Dublin, fronts Highway 8. If we move to the next slide. So this is an air photo of the property. The property is about 27 acres, and it's the former lagoon that treated wastewater from the Sabina Turkey slaughtering facility in Dublin, which has since moved to Mitchell. And there is a forested area on the property as well. The property was purchased by Bartels Environmental Services in 2020 with an intention to convert it to a waste storage lagoon for treated digestate for NASM material, non-agricultural source material. And then the material is proposed to be land applied. So it's the intention by Bartels Environmental is to reuse the site. Liquid waste would be received on the property, shipped by hauler trucks and transferred into the lagoon system. And then it would be transferred from the site and onto approved NASM planned sites for land applications. So if we move to the next property site, there are three provincial acts that I'll be referring to this evening, which are all relevant for the way that this site would be regulated. The first is the Environmental Protection Act, which is regulated by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Through the Environmental Protection Act, an environmental compliance approval permit is required. The applicants have received an environmental compliance approval, an ECA permit, and a copy of that is in the council package. The ECA permit has been reviewed by Steve Burns at PM Ross, who is an environmental engineer acting for West Perth. And Mr. Burns is here tonight, who will speak to council after Ron Ninehouse's comments in order to answer questions and address the ECA permit process. The second piece of legislation that is relevant for the management of the site that is being referred to is the Nutrient Management Act. The Nutrient Management Act requires that a NASM plan be prepared. And a NASM plan, again, is a plan to regulate non-agricultural source material and the land application of that NASM waste onto agricultural lands. And then the third relevant legislation, and perhaps, and is why we're having the meeting tonight, is through the Planning Act, and the relevant approval authority for a zoning bylaw amendment, which the applicant has applied for, is the Municipality of West Perth. So there is a requirement through the Planning Act that there be a public meeting in order to advise neighboring property owners and agencies with regards to any change in the zoning of property in order to receive comments from the public. So we move to the next slide. So I have some photos of the site, which I'll review, and then I'll refer to the planning comments in the planning report. So this is a picture of the entrance onto the subject property from Highway 8. I'm standing on Highway 8 looking towards the property. And then next slide. So this is standing on the site on the berm surrounding one of the lagoon cells, looking north towards the highway. In the next slide, this is a picture of one of the lagoon cells on the property. So there are 3 lagoon cells on the property. Next slide. This is standing on the lagoon, looking towards neighboring property at 6935 line 34 on Highway 8. This is cropland at the south end of the property. And then the final picture shows the Goddard to Exeter Railway, which is south of the property. So that the property is designated agricultural in the official plan, so that the map on the screen now is the designation from the Perth County official plan, which shows that the property is agricultural. The property is outlined in red, and you can see the settlement area of Dublin in the on this slide as well. So that shows the proximity to Dublin settlement area. And then the next slide shows the zoning on the property. So the white again outlined in the red line is an agricultural zone. So that is zoned agricultural in the West Perth zoning bylaw. So the applicant has applied to change the zoning from an agricultural zone to an ACM special zone. So ACM stands for Agricultural, Commercial, Industrial in the West Perth zoning bylaw. And the permitted uses are on the screen now: a biosolid storage facility, farm product processing business, a feed and or fertilizer blending operation, and accessory uses, building structures, including an office. So that is what has been applied for. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, I don't want to see that slide. Thanks. So the planning comments, then I will review. So the agricultural designation in the Perth County official plan directs us to the agricultural policies in the Perth County official plan, and likewise the agricultural policies in the provincial policy statement. The primary directive for the agricultural policies is to protect agricultural land for agricultural purposes. There are policies in both the provincial policy statement and the County of Perth official plan that allow the consideration of agricultural, commercial, and industrial uses. And what that means is that where a use has demonstrated that it is a business related to agriculture and primarily intended to support an agricultural use, it can be permitted in an agricultural designation. So that direction is both from the provincial policy statement and from the County of Perth official plan. And what that generally refers to is farm implement dealers or feed storage facilities. Those are the types of uses, anything related to farm inputs, fertilizer sales, anything related to agriculture. So that the intention from the planning documents is that where a use is an agricultural, commercial, industrial use, and it's related to agriculture, it can be situated in the agricultural business. So that is the policy framework that is that directs the consideration of this application for rezoning. So the request is to change the zoning from an agricultural zone to an agricultural, commercial, and industrial zone. So in reviewing the application, then the first question is it an agricultural, commercial, and industrial zone? And the applicant has provided a planning justification report stating that from his opinion, from his professional planning opinion, it is an agricultural industrial use because it stores biosolids that will be land applied on agricultural land. So it's considered an agricultural supplement. And the planning department is satisfied with that opinion. So we're satisfied that the application can be considered an agricultural, commercial, and industrial use. So then we move to section 5510 and the county official plan. And these policies are reviewed in the planning report, which outlines if an agricultural, commercial, and industrial use is proposed in an agricultural designation, does it satisfy a number of tests? And one of the tests is it a minimum amount of agricultural land? So for that question, you can say yes, it's an existing parcel of land, 27 acres, that's not currently being used for agricultural purposes. The section 5510 also suggests that the use should be generally small in nature and that it be appropriate for the agricultural designation due to the nature of their operations and land use compatibility conflicts that may occur in settlement areas. So the planning question there is it reasonable to consider an agricultural solid storage facility such as Bartels is proposing as being inappropriately situated in an agricultural designation? The planning department's opinion on that is noted in the report is that it's what I just said is that it's considered to be appropriate to locate the use in the agricultural designation because it's proposing to the waste is proposing to be land applied as fertilizer. The policies also ask if that a minimum that the use must not be one that requires municipal water or sewage services, and that's the case, that it fronts a public road, and that's the case, and that a rezoning application be required, and that's what we're considering today. The most critical questions, and I think that the correspondence that we received from the neighboring property owners to date emphasize this, is in section 5510 sub H and section 5510 sub L, and I'll review those in more detail. So the concern in section H is with regards to drainage. And then the policy continues. Well, I'll read the entire policy. So as people hear it, adequate drainage must either be available or readily capable of being made available. When reviewing drainage, consideration shall be given to existing and potential impacts on ground and surface water quality and quantity, both upstream and downstream, and on adjacent properties and roadways. Where such potentially deleterious material as liquid fertilizers are stored and handled on site, appropriate spills containment and contingency plans shall be required. So at this point, I refer back to the relevant legislation for the file. So as noted, an ECA permit has been issued by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks for the subject property. And the applicant will refer to this. The permit is in your package. Essentially, the ECA permit addresses the issues that are identified in section H. It's not to say that there's not reason to discuss it, but the way that the applicant has addressed the requirements of section H are through the ECA permit itself. The second policy, I think, that is extremely important for the neighboring property owners is with regards to 5510L, that adequate distance separation and buffering shall be provided from adjacent residential areas and other sensitive uses such as senior housing or hospital. Distance separation shall be addressed through the local municipal zoning bylaw while buffering. E.g., fencing, landscaping shall be considered at the site plan stage. So the environmental, as I'm not an expert with the ECA permit, I think I simply will not speak to this part of the application and allow Ron Ninehouse and Steve Burns to provide their comments because they are more familiar with that. But simply to say from the planning department's perspective, the critical responsibility of ensuring that odors at the neighboring property owners and monitoring the groundwater fall to the environmental compliance approval permit through the Environmental Protection Act. Those are all the comments I have to introduce the application, and I believe that Mr. Ninehouse would like to speak. Yeah, at your direction. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Nope, that's fine. We'll carry on. I can speak at this time. Well, How would council like to do it? I think we listen and hear everybody, and then if we have questions at the end, we can ask them at that time, maybe make a note. So yes, if he's ready to speak, we'll bring him up.
Good evening, Mayor McKenzie and members of council. My name is actually Dave Barrett, and I'm with IBI Group. I'm the planner on behalf of Bartels. I'll give a brief presentation. I don't want to dictate too much what Ms. Reed has covered here, and then a representative from Bartel will speak more technical aspects of the application. Is this my technical? Next slide, please. Or can I use this? Go on. That's okay. I'll just say next slide. Thank you. So just briefly to provide a little bit of background, Bartels initiated consultation with township and county staff in July 2019 regarding this site in particular, given it was an existing lagoon. In January 2020, Bartels purchased the site with the intent to use it as a biosolid storage lagoon. In February 2020, the ECA process was initiated. Through the ECA process, specifically the notice posting on the environmental registry, it was determined that a zoning bylaw amendment would be required to recognize use a more appropriate zone in the ACM zone, which was Ms. Reed identified. So just quickly in general, the Bartels is proposing to receive biosolids and anaerobically treated digestate for storage at the proposed site. The site will not receive hazardous or liquid industrial waste for disposal. Next slide, please. I'll breeze through this fairly quickly because we just covered this. As previously noted, the zoning bylaw amendment is from agricultural to the ACM special zone 31, which will specifically permit biosolid use. The woodlot on the subject property will be rezoned from agricultural to the natural resource environment 2 zone. And then the other approvals required, as noted by Ms. Reed, are the environmental compliance approval through the Environmental Protection Act. The ECA is to allow for the temporary storage of treated liquid organic material to be transported and land applied on local agricultural land as a soil amendment. The ECA speaks to potential adverse effects and how they are to be mitigated. The ECA also includes guidelines on the operation of the site, including groundwater monitoring and complaint management. Representatives from Bartels are here this evening and will speak to the ECA and site operations in more detail. Next slide, please. The subject property is shown here, highlighted in red. The subject property is located east of Dublin on Highway 8. The subject property is surrounded by agricultural and agricultural-related uses. The existing 3 lagoons are visible to the rear of the property. A woodlot of about approximately 1 hectare area is located at the front of the property, and the existing access is visible here as well, which will be maintained to Highway 8. Next slide, please. With respect to the county official plan, the subject property is designated agriculture, and it's also identified as having an existing sewage lagoon. While the subject property is located within a prime agricultural area, the property is an existing sewage lagoon site without prime agricultural soils or the potential for farming. The planning justification report submitted in support of the application and the staff report prepared by Ms. Reed summarizes how the application is in conformity with section 5.5.10 of the official plan, which provides criteria for considering farm-related commercial and industrial activities. In summary, the proposed biosolids storage use supports agriculture, benefits from being in close proximity to, and provides direct products to farm operations in the area as land application as a nutrient-rich organic soil. Thank you. Subject property is zoned agriculture. We could probably skip this slide because it's repetitive. Thank you. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. There are no building structures or waste scales on the site. In general, the only changes to the site coming from the Sabina Foods operation are some gate, like a gate at Highway 8, and upgrades to the access to allow for truck turnaround for loading and unloading. No municipal services are required, as noted. The site consists of 3 cells with berms, as seen on the site plan. Cells 1 and 2 are storage cells, while cell 3 is also for storage and treatment from material collected from cells 1 and 2. The lagoon has a compacted clay liner that prevents material from entering the groundwater. Stormwater that comes into contact will remain within the lagoon, and groundwater monitoring is required through the ECA. Stored material will be collected for agricultural applications several times per year within a 6-month period, excluding winter. Next slide, please. Mitigation measures for potential odor, dust, litter prevention, as well as pest and noise control have been developed through the ECA process and will be implemented. The development of the subject property is guided by the applicable planning framework, the provincial policy statement, the county's official plan, and the township zoning bylaw. As previously noted, the planning justification report submitted in support of the application and the staff report prepared by Ms. Reed summarize how the application is in conformity with section 5.5.10 of the official plan, which provides criteria for considering farm-related commercial and industrial activities. Summary, the proposed use of the subject property is an agricultural related use. This opinion recognizes that while the subject property is located within a prime agricultural area, property is an existing sewage lagoon site without prime agricultural soils for potential farming. The reuse of the site for biosolids storage will avoid the use of productive farmland elsewhere in the prime agricultural area. The proposed biosolids storage use supports agriculture, benefits from being in close proximity to, and provides direct products for farm operations in the area. The proposed use is appropriately located in a rural area to avoid liability conflicts. Next slide. It's our opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is justified as regard to matters of provincial interest set out in the Planning Act and is consistent with provincial policy. The proposed development also conforms to the county official plan. Environmental and potential nuisance effects have been addressed through the ECA process approved by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks in July of this year. Given the existing use of the subject property and the support provided by the proposed development to the surrounding properties, it's our opinion that this application serves public interest and is overall facilitates good planning. Next slide, please. I'll turn this over to Ron from Bartell to tell you more about Bartell's services and site operations, please. Next slide, please.
Good evening, Mayor McKenzie and council members. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Bartell's Environmental. Most of you probably do not know who we are, so I thought I'd take a little bit of time to introduce our company as well, initially anyways, to give you a sense of who Bartell's Environmental is. The next slide. So Bartell's Environmental is part of the Bartell's Group. It's a family-owned group of businesses, but we'll focus on the Bartell's Environmental side, but we have businesses within Ontario and also into the US. Bartell's Environmental has been around since 2001. Probably prior to that with the senior Bartels. Ben Bartels was involved in a lot of waste management within municipalities prior to 2001, but then his son came and started the business with him back in 2001. So we go to the next slide. This is a quick, short 1-minute video just about our services that we offer. We're able to play that.
Everything is designed to work together. The nutrients of the soil provide the nourishment for the crop, and once the harvest is processed and utilized, it finds its way back again and within that very same soil that once took root in. Every field planted is sustained by the never-ending cycle of water. Every drop falls, flows, and encourages growth before returning to the sky to start its journey all over again. This is why we've made it our mission to aid in the movement of organic materials along each step of that cyclical journey, from diverting organic materials to the production of renewable energy to promoting growth through organic soil amendments and fertilizer, to ensure that every drop of water, every ounce of soil, and every harvest yield reaches its highest potential, to continue to move each step of Ontario's circular economy forward. This is why at Bartels Environmental, we're connecting people, technology, and nature to get us all moving forward together. Learn more at bartelsenvironmental.ca.
So this slide shows basically what Bartels Environmental does. We have a bunch of different aspects to our business. We do haul liquid organic waste. A lot of that material goes into facilities that'll process that material. So whether it be an anaerobic digestion facility, so food waste goes into these facilities that generate renewable natural gas or renewable electricity. And then from that product, we also then haul digestate or the biosolids into storage or direct to land applications. So Bartels has its own haulage equipment, also has its own farm equipment that land applies the material. And then you can see that's circular economy, which then goes into as fertilizer back into the soil. Soil generates new food production, and then that cycles back through. Next slide. We service a lot of different farms throughout southwestern Ontario. Again, so just give you a quick graphic. We do service throughout Ontario and up into Port Elgin, Muskoka way as well. Just you saw that in the video, but quick glimpse of some of our equipment. All our equipment is maintained by our own shop. It's all newer equipment. Again, it falls within a lot of the regulations. Our CVOR is really clean as well. Next slide. Some of our farm equipment and some of the ways that we bring materials to the field. So as been said throughout this presentation, we are operating that lagoon, or that lagoon will operate under the current ECA, which was approved in July. That site is a temporary storage for liquid organic waste, and the intent is that that material will be brought to local agricultural fields. And so it's a temporary storage. We bring it in when we can't land apply. Again, we get into the winter time or get into rainy seasons, or time outside of NASM. So NASM material is allowed to be applied onto agricultural fields between April 1st and November 30th. And then even within that, it really depends on what the soil conditions are with regards to surface water and moisture content into the soil. So again, the material isn't always able to be land applied directly. So then we look for a place to bring it and then land apply it as the timing allows. So again, as we've heard a bunch of times throughout this presentation, the ECA does speak to the adverse effects. So when we talk about dust or odors, just some of the major concerns that have been shared, all those items will be addressed under the ECA. Also, the way to address any complaints that may come out of there. The odor categories, there's three main odor categories that exist within the regulations. So there's odor category 1, 2, and 3. This site is actually permitted only to bring in odor category 1 and 2 in the first 12 months. So the MOE realizes that odor can be a concern with some lagoon sites. So they've minimized what we can actually bring into that lagoon in the first 12 months until they get a sense of how we're operating that site. and if there's any odor complaints, yes or no. So some of the materials that we cannot bring in would be dried biosolids, which tend to have a higher odor content. Processed material coming directly outside or from a meat processing facility. So they really do, with inside the ECA, limit what we can bring in there. And also the impacts are the ways that we have to use to minimize the odor that may come out of that site. So you'll read inside the ECA talking about capping water. That's one of the ways that you can minimize odor, is by having a level of water on top of that, on top of the material, which will minimize the odor coming into the atmosphere. And just wanted to be clear as well, so we're not permitted to bring in untreated sewage. So when we think about material that's going to be coming in from septic systems and things like that, that's not permitted to come into the site. It has to go through a treatment process, and all that material that we bring in is and will be also land applied. So prior to receiving the material, we're going to analyze. There's analytics that come in with all the material that comes in to us, and we'll ensure that all of those meet the requirements to land apply. Again, the EC speaks to a bunch of different things about the mixing and how we have to notify the neighborhood when we do start to mix, and we typically mix when we get ready to land apply. Make sure that we're not just grabbing the top water, but we're also getting the solid content. Groundwater monitoring, as well as a program that we're going to have to have approved by the MECP prior to the operation of that site, so that, and then that sequence and that cadence of that testing is going to have to be approved by them. And then there's contingency and emergency response plans. I think there was a comment as well about perhaps that lagoon overflowing. Within ECA, there's a certain amount of freeboard space that we have to allow for the event of snow melt or any storm water that may be accumulating over time. I think that might be the last slide.
Okay, perhaps you maybe just want to grab a chair front row there, and we're going to open it up for questions from people that are here. Susanna, do you have something further?
Just to say that Mr. Burns is here from PM Ross. If
Oh,
you would like to
okay,
introduce
yep,
yourself.
if Steve wants to say something, that's fine too, yes, by all means.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Yeah, the environmental compliance approval is the key document here once this, or if this site is approved and goes into operation, because it is the document that provides protection to the neighbors, it provides protection to the municipality and to the environment. It sets out conditions. It's in the ECA that it sets out what can be brought to this site. And in this case, it's only material that can be then taken away and land disposed. So it's not hazardous waste or anything like that. It's the ECA sets out how much material can be brought. It talks about the hours of operation of the site. It sets out a 7 in the morning till 9 in the evening as the maximum time. And that time period would probably, that operation would only occur likely at short times of the year, but regardless, that's the time frame. It sets out a requirement for groundwater monitoring. Concerns have been raised about the effect of this material on wells and so on, and that's recognized. Studies have been done to establish that's not likely a concern, but regardless, there will be monitoring put in place to ensure it's not a concern. The ECA is some 38 pages long. It's all fine print, but 4 of those pages deal specifically with odors and how the operator owner would have to deal with odors, who complaints would be made to. they are required under the ECA to have 24/7 response to any complaint that is made. The ECA requires the Bartels to provide securities of in the order of $2 million to ensure that if at some point the site is no longer used for this purpose, that it can be properly closed out and so on. So that is set out. And I think from a municipal perspective, the really key issue, key factors in the ECA are that the site and its operation is not allowed to create what's called adverse effects. It's been mentioned 2 or 3 times here already, but odor would certainly be an adverse effect. It's not allowed, and there would have to be a response to that to stop that adverse effect. So the ECA sets out very clearly what is not allowed and what would need to be addressed. The next point is, and I mentioned that financial assurance is in place. The province would hold that to ensure that the future is taken care of properly. And from West Perth's perspective, all the reporting on this, all the responsibility is really between Bartels and the Ministry of the Environment. It's West Perth has no direct I'm sure you would have an interest, but there's no direct responsibility in terms of what goes on there. It's really the province that will ensure that things are done properly, along with the owner. Any questions?
I think what we'll do, and if you want to, I guess you can sit where you were sitting, and then if we get a question, we'll let you respond at that time. Anything else, Susanna? Okay, we're going to open it up for questions, and I'm going to take questions from the audience, and then the final questions will come from members of council. I guess first of all, we'll take those that wish to speak in support of the application, and we do have one piece of correspondence that does kind of fall into that category. So Dan, I'll let you read that correspondence at this time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we received a letter on behalf of Leona Vandewally, and I apologize if that's not correct. But she is the owner of the east half of Lot 13, Concession 1, Hibbert Ward, which is the adjoining property. The letter follows that we have had a good relationship with Bartels Environmental Service since their purchase of the property. We do not anticipate that there are any major concerns, but we are wondering as neighbors what the proposed changes mean to our property. The description of the changes requested are vague, and we request a more expanded explanation of what the proposed changes would or could mean. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So just a few ground rules here. So if you wish to speak, and I'm still going to open it up if there's anybody else wishes to speak in favor, but if you come up, we'll use, I guess we'll use the center microphone. Will we hear our Susanna's? All right, well, we can use 2 microphones. The key, I think, is there's a switch on the stand that says talk, and if you push that, the red light will come on, and that means that you're in business and everybody can hear you. So I know the one is already red. The one on the table over here needs to be turned on yet. And maybe Audrey can turn it on, and then we're ready to roll. So as you go to use them probably. Yeah. Okay. All right. So is there anybody else that wishes to speak at this time in support of the application? All right. In opposition to the application, and I do have a list of 3 people that have indicated they wish to speak, and I'm going to take them not in any particular order. Do you want me to take top to bottom or bottom to top, or what would you like here? We'll go to top to bottom. Okay. So the first person that has indicated they wish to speak is Colleen Eckmeyer. Colleen?
I'm sorry, what button am I supposed to push? My name is Colleen Eckmeyer. I live at 6987 line 34 in Dublin, fairly close proximity to this proposed use. Thank you, Mayor McKenzie and council members for this opportunity. I had many points, but a lot of those have been covered in the discussion that's occurred today. My review of the documents submitted by Bartel were prior to knowing that there was ECA approval already granted. My two main points that I want to bring to the forefront are the current condition of the lagoon prior to even use by Bartel. That lagoon has been in place for probably greater than 50 years. With the documents that I reviewed, there is no indication that an integrity of that clay basin has ever been done to determine that there already is not failure or leakage. The site was unmonitored for 2 years, and I don't see any QA reports that indicate the integrity or the appropriateness of continued or intended use to circumvent land, water, or aquifer contamination. My second point is in the documents submitted by Bartels related to wastewater and stormwater management. They acknowledge in their document under section H of policy that indicates there must be adequate drainage available or readily capable of being made. They suggest that they indicate that there is no stormwater management systems or drainage systems on site. Pictures show that there are no spillways or containment. Their report also shows that the property is surfaced by lagoon cells. I take that to mean that there is no space to install drainage systems. And I therefore propose that their intent does not meet the standard of the policy that says that must be in place. I have several other points. The last one being the change in the zoning bylaw. They acknowledge that a special provision is required to the ACM zone to specifically permit the proposed biosolids storage. And they continue to say, although the proposed biosolids storage is not listed as a specific use in the ACM zone, nor is defined in the zoning bylaw, it is their opinion that it meets the general intent of the ACM zone. I suggest that this is a liberal and inaccurate opinion and not fact. I therefore encourage, because of the lack of QA documents to support the sustainability of this site, inadequate features that meet policy or current environmental standards. There was no plan regarding emergency management of spills, berm failures, soil or water contamination, risks or failures, and alternate sources of potable water for residents who depend on uncontaminated water source through the available aquifer system, which is most certainly impacted by the cumulative agricultural and industrial activities occurring in the area. I therefore submit an application that the application for zoning change with special permission to permit the proposed biosolids storage use of the lagoon as a biosolids storage by Bartels Environmental Services or by any other like entity be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Spokesman from Bartel, want to answer those questions?
Through you, Mayor, I can cover the zoning question anyways, as in terms of the special provision The ACM zone permits a wide variety of, the standard ACM zone permits a wide variety of agriculturally related commercial industrial uses. Fertilizer, processing, storage, a very long list. But biosolids is not specifically listed as one of those uses. If I'm not mistaken, so biosolids has been added as a special permission to other properties within the township and county. And it certainly is the most applicable, most appropriate zone for this use, given it's agriculturally related. The clay liner question.
Yeah, so with regards to the structural integrity of the berms, through the ECA process, the MECP came and did a visual inspection of the site, and also included in our ECA starting in 2024 is an inspection every 2 years of the site itself and the structural integrity of the berm. So that question, that comment can be addressed also through the ECA process and what we're required to do. I think there was then maybe the other comment about runoff or spill containment. Again, those are raised berms there. So, and then like I mentioned in my report about the freeboard, so we have to allow a certain amount of space inside those lagoons. Even though they have a capacity of a certain amount of cubic meters, we're only allowed to fill it to, I don't know what the exact number, whether it's 80% or, again, that's all been defined inside the ECA to allow for any unexpected storms or snow meltage.
Does that answer, Colleen, your questions? Okay. The next person that I have here to speak is Bruce Battles. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I've had a whole lot of questions before I came, but hearing everyone speak, you covered some of them. But there are some questions. I realize it's a raised berm around the lagoon. How high is that raised berm? Standing from the field out, how high would you say it is? Just approximately. So in Lagoon 1 and Lagoon 3, if I can recall correctly, you're going 3.1 meters in there, right? And then 2.1 meters in the center to allow for your overflow. You're already pretty high to the top of that berm for my calculations.
Bruce?
Yes.
If you can address your comments to council here.
Oh, sorry.
No,
sorry.
that's
No,
fine.
I'm not trying to pick anything.
No.
No.
And
yep.
then we can, you make your points and your
Okay.
questions, and then we can turn it over to them
Okay.
and they can respond.
Now, the odor. My wife and I moved into Dublin in May 1992, when it was Cuddy Foods before Sabina, and they were using that lagoon and they were piping the turkey guts out to there. In the past, I think 15 to 20 years, they've been trucking the guts away, but still taking the wash water out and using it in the lagoon. Is it still called a sewage lagoon when you're for that? What you're calling a sewage lagoon for the biosolids, I can understand, but to be called a sewage lagoon for when they're just taking the cleaning waters out to there and the wash water, I'm not quite following that. So my concern is odors from the biosolids. The second concern is I realize every 2 years there's going to be testing done in the packed clay lagoon, but is it just going to be a visual inspection that they're always going to be doing? Because we're also concerned about our water in Dublin. Either we're drilled wells or we're dug wells. So that is another concern I have. The other concern I have is what's it gonna do to our value of our property? That's my big concern. I put a big addition onto my house because I enjoy living in the village of Dublin. But if there's gonna be too much odor there, and when it comes time for me to sell it, new people are gonna come and look at my house and they're gonna smell that. If there is an odor, I don't know. Nobody can seem to tell me if there is or not. I realize there's gonna be a water crust on cell 1 and cell 2, but cell 3 is gonna be the one that's gonna be agitated from 7 AM till 9 PM at nights. Is that 7 days a week it's happening? I don't know. Are they trucking in every day into the lagoon? I don't know. So many questions I could ask. I could go on, but I'm gonna leave that with you. I'm just gonna state my concerns, and thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. I'll try and remember the questions that you asked here. So, I guess the definition, the sewage lagoon, maybe Mr. Burns, you can be the one to answer that. Maybe, it was used as a sewage lagoon, now it's wash water. Is it once a sewage lagoon? Is it always a sewage lagoon?
Mayor, I've had a lot of experience with terminology. That, to me, what went in there before, when it was poultry processing, was industrial waste. Would be, in my terminology, wastewater. Sewage would be something that would be generated by a community like Mitchell, and in the past went into sewage lagoons adjacent to Mitchell. So there's a difference. I'm not sure I understand what the concern with the word is. Like, it's no longer a wastewater lagoon or a sewage lagoon. It's going to be used for biosolid storage, which is something different completely.
Okay. The other comment that, or one of the other comments that Bruce made, and I'll direct this to Bartels, was about the visual inspections, or how is it inspected? And you had mentioned every 2 years.
Yeah, and then I think the other question was with regards to the groundwater, which will be tested as well regularly. So the berms is one side of things, and then we're also going to have the groundwater monitoring, which will be in place again through the ECA as documented in through the ECA to the MECP. So groundwater monitoring will be regular, and the berms will be every 2 years.
And the operations, and I remember reading that, it's, I believe it's 6 days a week, and it's from 7 till 8 or 9, or 7 days.
Yeah, that's what it allows us to do, 7 to 9 p.m. Again, I can't speak to, is that going to be every day? No, I don't know. It won't be every day. The times when we're going to get probably a little later into the evening is going to be the times when we're pulling out and land applying the material. But what we're doing currently right now is we probably stop at 5 or 6 o'clock. So, but again, we allowed for that time frame within the ECA. That was permitted.
And I'm going to ask Susanna, because she was our planner. And it relates to that, hours of operation. Because this is a zoning bylaw, do we have any influence as to what the hours of operations could be?
As it's regulated by the ECA permit, I don't think that we would wade into that. Like, it's adequately covered.
Fair enough, fair enough. The last question that Bruce raised, and I don't know whether there's anybody here can answer it, but I'll throw it out there if you want to take a stab at it, and that's about property values.
I'll take a stab at it. I know it's a very sensitive subject, obviously. I believe under the Planning Act, property value isn't something that can weigh into a matter of deciding something of on planning merits. And the other point would be that given that it's an existing established use as a lagoon site for many decades, that I think it's sort of an established use and it's not really a change that will affect property value.
Certainly, interest rates going up will affect property values as much as anything, I think. Okay, the next speaker that I have down here is Mark Cox. And, Mark?
Mr. Mayor, Council. My name's Mark Cox. I live at 6984 John Street, back door to Bruce. I have a bunch of questions, quite a lengthy list of them actually. Some of them are covered, but let's get into them. Are open clay-based lagoons what this type of material is typically stored in? I know it's coming from one facility to another, obviously not stored in a lagoon there. Is this what a clay-based lagoon, is that what it's normally stored in, or what it would be stored in?
Well, we can answer that one
Wanna
right
just
now.
go one
Otherwise,
at a time?
I have a hard job remembering all the
Sure.
questions you asked, so,
Yeah, there's multiple ways to store this type of material in a lagoon, and clay-based is one of them. And like a liner, plastic liner would be another one. Again, it's the MECP looks at these types of sites and they assess the condition of them, and they in this case in the lagoon that we have there, they accepted the quality of it.
I guess that actually comes into my next point. Since there are lagoons of this nature holding this type of material, are any of them relatively close to small communities such as ours, and is it equal distance? And if they are, has anyone from council been to these communities to see the impact on the community?
Yeah, I can't really speak to all the lagoon sites throughout Ontario, but I would just be guessing. I apologize.
Do you speak to your own lagoons, or is this the only one you have?
This will be the first lagoon that we own.
Okay. And has anyone from council looked into this or investigated it themselves?
the only lagoons that we're actually familiar with are the ones that we currently own ourselves. I don't know, Dean, you had a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I did a bit of investigating to that question. Somewhere in the reporting for Bartels, I think it was in the IBI report, the Niagara Garner Road biosolids facility was referenced. And in the IBI report, it said that whatever was being done at that facility would be done similar at Dublin. I looked up on the internet and I discovered that that facility is permanently closed. Further investigation revealed that that facility had lagoons, but also, it also had storage tanks to reduce the odor. So I don't see any, in the presentation so far, I don't see any indications of storage tanks being used to mitigate odor concerns. I'll stop my response there. I had other questions towards odor, but I'll stop to answer Mark's questions directly. Thank you.
I have a dug well in Dublin, and I guess the groundwater issue has been addressed, but if I get my water tested and all of a sudden issues start arising, who do I address? Who do I bring these to?
Steve, do you want to take a crack at that one, or one of you two gentlemen? I don't know who's best qualified to answer that one.
The ECA would, if you had a concern with your groundwater, if your well began to test that, you would contact Bartels first. Let them know that. And if you didn't get a satisfactory response, you would contact the Ministry of Environment. And the procedures set out in the ECA.
Mayor McKenzie. I heard reference earlier to immediate, that the issue would be immediately addressed, but I didn't hear that from you in your words. So I heard earlier any adverse effect would be immediately addressed, but that didn't sound like those same words that you were using.
The ECA requires the owner, Bartels, to have 24/7 response to a complaint or concern. So that's, I guess, would be considered pretty close to immediate. Now, depending on the nature of what the concern is, you may not be able to fix it immediately, but it would, the process would begin to address it, should begin to address it immediately as required by the approval. I don't know if that helps or not. But.
My concern is obviously waiting until there is, excuse me, negativity found on a test in a water system. So when we say the water is going to be tested regularly, is that daily, every 2 days, 3 days, once a week? I know I worked at a campground for a couple of summers. We had to test the water every morning to ensure that we're providing, adequate drinking water. And my concern is obviously with that many people living in Dublin, we wait until we find a test down the road, and then we're acting on it now. I know we've talked about this in different capacities in council and being proactive and whatnot, but I can't envision saying yes to this if we don't know for sure, how regulated this is going to be, and not just a regular test, but how often it's regular.
Yeah, so to respond to that, again, we refer to the ECA document a lot, but the ECA requires Bartels prior to the first load being brought to that site to submit a groundwater monitoring proposal to the MECP, which they would have to approve. So I cannot speak to the regularity of that test quite yet until that proposal is submitted and they'll approve.
And Mark?
Every time. Here we go. So I guess this goes to that point also. Problems with dust, problems with smell, problems with traffic created by trucks in and out. Are those going to Bartels? And then also the environment, like Ministry, or we contract someone in the municipality? Is there a name specifically who we should be calling? Aside from Bartels, because it's hard to rat on yourself as a company.
Go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, the process would be the same as Odor. The initial conversation could come to us. If you've been driven by the site recently, you've seen there's a sign there. There's our number on there, and there's also the MECP number for any complaints, spill, those sorts of things. There's 2 numbers on there. Either call them. Preferably, you call us first, and then if we can't give you a satisfactory response, you can call them, and that number is on the site.
And I'm not even bother with that. I think you addressed this earlier, the classification of odor materials that are coming in will be 1 and 2, and then 3 after a year, as long as what doesn't happen.
So the MECP again will allow us to bring in odor category 1 and 2 in the first year of operation. If we want to bring in odor category 3 into the year 2, that would need their approval that the site is operating as it should.
I understand that there will be a limit as to how much material can come into the facility on a daily basis. I believe it's 800 cubic meters, roughly. Just because I can't fathom 800 cubic meters, can you tell me how many truckloads roughly that would be? And is there a limit on how much can leave the facility in a day?
So our trucks typically carry about 40 or 44 cubic meters. So say 20 truckloads coming into the site. It does also speak to how much we can haul out of there. Sorry, I can't find it quite.
Another question that you can maybe work on while he's looking for that?
Sure, I got lots of questions. Hours of operation covered. So what's the name of the government paperwork that's come out saying approve this site? What's that called in the AC something?
ECA.
ECA. Can we get a copy of that? People of the community?
Nicholas?
Yeah, it's posted on the our website inside the package, the public meeting package. That was great. Yeah.
I think that might cover it. I think everything else is covered by somebody else. But yeah, we can get an idea as to how much we'll be leaving in a day, because 40 trucks in and 120 trucks out, or whatever it could possibly be. That's a lot of traffic down that highway.
Okay, good. All right. Have we found it yet?
No, I apologize. I haven't
Okay,
found it yet.
keep looking. Yeah, come on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak at this time? Go ahead.
Ernie Fleming, been a resident in Dublin for 40 plus years. And I am concerned about where this product is coming from. And if it's coming from other areas, why here?
Okay, we do have a list. I haven't got it in front of me of municipalities that they do work for. Perhaps, Dave, can you mention that? I think there's about 7 or 8 different municipalities. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. I just haven't got it right up in front of me yet. Susanna? Okay, all right. That would likely, I think that's maybe what Ernie's asking. That would indicate the municipalities that they do work for. There might be other industries or corporations, but yeah, just the municipal.
Lucan, Dorchester, Thorndale, Fergus, Ingredient, Greenfield, Cargill, London, Elsa Craig, and the Stratford Water Resource Recovery Facility is on hold. Bartels may partner with Stratford in the future. The ECA permit itself is broader than just municipal sewage.
That answer your question, Ernie? No? Obviously, because there is a facility there, and that I think that's the bottom line. No, go ahead.
So the other communities don't want it either, then why us? Why throw it at us? That's not right.
I'm not going to argue with you. Certainly, in speaking with what we have in this area, in Mitchell in particular, we have a sewage treatment plant, but we also have storage facilities to retain the sludge, and we haul it out Rich, once or twice a year, usually in the fall, isn't it? Before winter, we haul it out and try and get as much out as we can. Right. So basically what Ernie is saying, I think that he's right to a point, is these municipalities that they're hauling in from obviously don't have storage capacity to retain their product. Anybody else with a question? Yep. I can just see your hand, Dave.
Good evening. I'm Dave Vanderwall. I represent the property to the direct east of the lagoons, and I just wanted to clarify the letter that you read there earlier was not really a letter of support. It was actually a letter to the planner asking for more information about what was happening. So I wrote that myself, and I do sincerely feel that Bartels have been good neighbors. As soon as they bought the facility, they met with us and introduced themselves, and I think they're doing an important job, you know, in southwestern Ontario dealing with waste, right? And how that goes is up to councils like yourselves to figure out what's best to happen for a community. But I do have one question as an adjoining neighbor, and it's something I'm going to bring up with Bartels, but the integrity of the lagoon, I do question. Currently, there's seepage in the southeast corner of L2, and it seeps onto our property there adjoining. So that's been going on since spring, and partly because I think the lagoons are filled much higher than they used to be when it was run previously by Sabina. So I do question, you know, whether there needs to be work done on these lagoons. As a farmer, you know, I also question when we have hog facilities, we need to spend a lot of money on concrete manure storage. Not sure how that differs from biosolids and the sewage that we're talking about here, but something for council to consider. You know, so we recognize that Bartels have a lot of liability here if something does go wrong. So I'm sure they've thought this through carefully and are trying to do the best they can. So it's a difficult decision for council to make here. I can appreciate that, but I think I would say don't be too hasty in doing this. And I think some people need to look at some of the documents. Like I said, I was just asking today for some information. So I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Anybody else in the audience? I see a hand at the back. Yes, Nikki, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Saunders, and I too am a resident of Dublin. I just want to start by saying how disappointed I am with the lack of transparency from the municipality. No one knew about the sale of this property. Obviously, Bartels would not purchase this property if they didn't feel confident they'd be approved for this potential rezoning. I'm also disappointed that the municipality would not necessarily be responsible for any contamination of soil. So basically, our municipality is washing their hands of any repercussions of this. Lastly, if anyone knows anything about Dublin's drainage systems or lack thereof, there are obvious legitimate concerns about the potential of leakage, because regardless of whether the wells are dug or drilled, we all drink from the same table. So I think that you should think long and hard about all of those things. And as a business owner in the village of Dublin, they can have severe repercussions if there was any type of leakage or contamination to the soil. And the fact that they're saying basically the municipality doesn't have to worry about being responsible for that, that just turns my stomach.
And thanks, Nikki. Jeff, do you want to comment sale and our involvement in it?
Sure, I can take a crack at those. So I'm Jeff Brick, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer, and I guess that from a land sale perspective, just a question around the municipality doesn't regulate land sales. We don't regulate who buys and sells land. That's an open market transaction. Our only reporting on them is done through MPAC, and it's done for taxation purposes. But it's not a process that any municipality does, the sort of disclosure of who's buying and selling land in the municipality. You can imagine the complexity of that. And no municipality would do that. So we certainly didn't report the land sales. We find out about them often at the same time that the public finds out about them, or the registry office finds out about them. We often find out after neighbors find out who the new neighbors are. But again, that's not a market that we inject ourselves in. And then the second part of the question about responsibility is one that I can take a crack at that in terms of being really clear about which regulatory authority has the jurisdiction. And I think the thing that you're doing is that it's not that we're not concerned or we don't care. It's that we have a regulatory jurisdiction, which is very clearly articulated in legislation. That's why the zoning bylaw meeting is being held here, because we control zoning. The ECA and the regulation of various pieces of legislation that are involving the environment in Ontario fall under the MECP, which is the Ministry of Environment. The new acronym escapes me every time. So the former Ministry of Environment is what I'm going to say. And I think the thing we can do best is be very transparent and clear about whose role is what, and not get messed up in the roles of other levels of government. It's not that we don't care, but it doesn't add any clarity to any of these processes, as difficult as they can be, by us taking on roles or having people think we have roles that we don't. So we're really clear about what our role is. This is a zoning bylaw meeting.
The answer is, it's called Environment, Conservation and Parks. That's the new term. Susan, did you have your hand up? Oh, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. To Nikki's point about, and to try and supplement CAO Brick's response, the Ontario Environmental Registry is where these applications are published. They're published online. So I think it's fair to say that council didn't know anything about the application that was made in, the decision was posted July 21st, 2022. The decision was made July 1st, 2022, but the actual appearance of this, I want to call it project, but the actual appearance of this subject didn't appear until, I want to say, June or July of 2021. And there was a comment period of July 29, from July 29th to September 12th, 2021 for 45 days. And that's where the public is given their one and only opportunity to have a say on the granting of the permission from the Ministry of the Environment. And I'll just quickly scroll down here. Comments received through the registry, 0. By email, 0. By mail, 0. So we didn't. I think it's fair to say that the councillors did not have any knowledge of this subject until, as Mr. Brick pointed out, until it was time to call a meeting about the zoning application for zoning amendment. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Susan, go ahead.
Mayor, Councillor, I hadn't intended on speaking, but I really do feel it's important to speak. I do understand spheres of jurisdiction, and this council does have the authority to approve or disapprove this zoning application. And approving it will change Dublin's quality of life, their air, water, potentially water. air, water, land. It could affect us greatly. And once, if you do approve that, you don't have the ability of helping us if we get into trouble. It's outside of your jurisdiction. And that is something I think is really, really important and you need to consider. Because we are your people and you are our people, but we need your help. We can't get it. So I just want you to think about that before you make that decision.
Thank you, Susan. Very good. Very good. You know, she used to work here. Yes, yes. Come on up.
Just another question to council. If municipality of West Perth were to turn down the zoning, if it's up to them, and Perth County, if they were to turn it down, if it's up to them, will the province step in and say, no, we're going through with it?
I'll save Susanna the trip. So the zoning bylaw amendments under the Planning Act, and so the appeal of an amendment under the Planning Act would go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is the current appeal mechanism. So if West Perth turned it down and someone appealed it, presumably the applicant appealed it, it would go to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a decision relying on the policies, the official plan, the zoning bylaw, the provincial policy statement, and the evidence that's given at that time. So whether or not the province, I think the province would respect local zoning bylaws and would respect the outcome of that process. We've satisfied ourselves that it requires a zoning bylaw amendment along with the ECA. The ECA has been secured, but the zoning bylaw amendment is a separate document. And you know, that question about whether the province would intervene or not, I think would be one that only they could answer. But in my experience, I haven't seen them intervene and overrule a local zoning bylaw amendment that I can recall.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Go ahead.
Mayor, council, Kevin O'Rourke. I own the property to the north, the farm. And I was concerned if this zoning bylaw is changed, does that in the future change setbacks for if we had any, you know, potential building projects or stuff like that?
Susanna, do you want to answer that one? Sorry.
Or not only us, but also any neighboring farms or even town people.
An agricultural, commercial, industrial zone is subject to MDS requirements, so it would be considered a non-agricultural use, and a minimum distance separation would be required from neighboring livestock operations. We did put our minds to this, and in the planning justification report provided by the applicant, there is an MDS calculation from any neighboring livestock operations, and it complies. But there is, so yes, the answer is that minimum distance separation would be required. At the time that we're reviewing it, I think that the fact that there are no people living there, and that is a biosolid storage facility, may be relevant to the consideration of the.
I think just a second, Susanna, but I think Kevin's question maybe was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you wanted to build a barn there, for example, or a house, the impact that this particular operation would have on a future barn or house.
With regards to a house, there's no minimum distance. Like, is the question with regards to minimum distance? A house is like, I don't know that an ECA permit regulates the proximity. Do you know, with regards to a new residential use in proximity to a property with an ECA permit? Like, there would but there isn't anything in the zoning bylaw with regards to the construction of a house.
All right,
Also, I assume that it's the only reason you can use this lagoon for the proposed application is because it's already there. Because anytime we go to build a livestock facility, we have to be double distance because of the village. Like the MDS requires twice the distance because of the village. So I would doubt if you could ever build a new lagoon. And also, it seems strange that you could use a clay base, like you can't do that with livestock.
Susanna?
No, I don't have any comments with regards to the integrity of the structure of the lagoon, but with regards to the minimum distance separation, that is the minimum distance separation tool is in consideration of new livestock operations or new sensitive land uses or agricultural businesses in proximity to new livestock operations. Because the biosolids storage facility that's proposed is not a livestock operation, the relevant tool from considering odor is the ECA permit rather than minimum distance separation. So for the biosolid storage facility, the ECA permit is what's considering and evaluating odor and then developing the mitigator processes if there are odor concerns. Does that make sense? And then what the applicant has done is considered the setback from neighboring livestock operations and has demonstrated that it conforms with the required setback from the existing barns.
So it's my understanding of, this gets back to what Kevin, I think, was hinting at. We don't allow, I guess the terminology is earthen structures for manure storage, do we?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I don't think we can. Do the applicants have anything to add to what the question was for Kevin at all?
No, I believe Susanna covered the MDS question.
Just to back up, and I don't see him. Matt, oh, he's sitting over here. Do you want to comment on earthen structures?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but we're talking three different or four different, regulations or whatever. So when it comes to construction, it would all come under the Ontario Building Code, and it requires structures like this to be built a certain way.
Mike?
So the question, I think, was our earthen berms for new barns. So Matt is our building inspector and our expert on the building code, and Bob McLean is unavailable today, and Matt's covering him. So I'm kind of putting him on the spot. But I think the question is, do we permit new earthen berms for manure storage?
No, we do not. It would be a bunker silo. Our zoning bylaw would permit temporary storage of dry material for a certain length of time. But for new structures, they would always be built out of concrete.
Councillor Tam?
I'm not sure if this is directed at the applicants or Susanna, but Matt, would it be possible for concrete tanks to be built there, or is it just the application is just for the 3 lagoons and that is the way it has to be?
Yeah, the site was purchased by Bartels because it was an existing site. So yeah, the thought process is not going into the concrete structures at all. And again, it's that site that the use has been reviewed by the MECP, and they've accepted the site quality and the site structure.
Counselor Chumkowski.
Thank you, your worship. So I'm going to start with the odor management plan. It does not exist in the submissions that we've received at this council. I think that's a huge oversight, very serious oversight. We have the residential area of Dublin, but we also have a revived, I want to call it a revived downtown Dublin, so to speak, with the businesses, the furniture store. I call them craft stores, but they draw people in from outside the area, local people, but also people from outside the area. And if the village of Dublin stinks, nobody's going to want to come to shop there, plain and simple. So the lack of an odor management plan is it's a serious missing part of this submission. I've been listening about the integrity of the clay base. Mrs. Eckmeyer, you're capturing my own heart because I'm a civil engineer, and geotechnical is one of my favorite subjects. So liner integrity, the question was asked, the answer was given that a visual inspection was made by the Ministry of the Environment. In my 25 years of civil engineering experience, I've never seen a structure, a bridge, a road, or even a lagoon accepted on a visual inspection. There's testing, there's reports, as thick as this binder. And a visual inspection by some bureaucrat at the Ministry of the Environment, I'm sure they're qualified, but don't tell me, show me the reports, show me the information that backs up that statement. I don't see it. That doesn't give me a warm and cozy feeling either. And to Mr. Vanderwall's point, clay liners do leak. Over time, they do leak. There's no slope stability analysis done. I could go on and on, but I think I've made my point. I'm hearing a lot of words, but I don't see the facts to back it up. And I'm not getting a cozy feeling about what's being proposed here. Thank you. If there's any comments that you can help to clarify that situation, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the members of the audience? Mrs. Beckman? Colleen?
Thank you again. I'm asking for a point of clarity on Kevin O'Rourke's point. He mentioned about the distance separation if you were to build a home. But part of that question that wasn't answered was in those current farmlands that are there, if an owner wanted to activate a livestock operation, would the zoning of this area now prevent him from building a barn and running livestock on that property?
Susanna's probably the best one to answer that one, I guess.
I'd have to check the zoning bylaw, but I would think that the MDS would apply for a new livestock operation because it is an ACM zone. But I know that there's some irony there that if we're imagining there's no one like there are truckers coming and going, so I'm thinking that MDS consideration may apply for a new barn, and that the review would the use would be relevant to that review.
Is there anybody else in the audience that has a question at this time? Okay, council members, Sherry?
Sorry, most of what I had has been asked. And you've talked about minimum distance with barns and stuff, but you haven't really been very clear yet about the village. I'm a strong strong supporter of villages and hamlets. Lived in one for years. I love the rural. But they want to grow and they want to expand and they want to flourish with their suitable commercial or like what I see coming into Dublin right now is suitable with their stores. Can you tell me for a solid fact that this will not affect the expansion in 10 years, 5 years as Dublin grows a little bit? Like, I mean, we have a lot of viable farmland. I'm talking out both sides of my mouth when I say that I want viable farmland is probably my number one priority. However, as little wards and villages, we want to have small businesses and sustainability and a few more houses and our kids and whatever else we're going to do. But can you tell me that this is not going to affect the growth of Dublin in the future with the
Who are
housing?
you addressing? your
Oh,
question
Susanna,
to?
sorry, Susanna, with the housing expansion with something like this.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know the answer to the question. So like the environmental compliance approval is relevant because it's a biosolid storage facility. So it's regulated through the Environmental Protection Act. So the minimum distance separation is not relevant for a settlement area expansion for a biosolid storage facility. Does that make sense? So the minimum distance separation requirement is a reciprocal requirement for new livestock operations or new sensitive uses, residential uses, including the expansion of settlement areas. In this case, it's not an agricultural use. It's regulated. It's not let me take that back. We have determined that it is relevant. It is appropriate to consider it in an agricultural designation, and it is consistent with an ACM zone. However, it's not subject to the minimum distance separation to setback requirements that apply to a livestock operation. So the short answer is I don't know the answer to the question, and I can do homework on that.
Deputy Mayor?
Susanna, could you compare Mitchell's lagoon system, which are clay, earth, and lagoon systems at the south end of Wellington Street, to this one? The stuff we put in, we put all the turkey blood in from Safina now. So we have the exact same setup right here in Mitchell at the south end of Wellington Street. Can you kind of give us the difference? These gentlemen are going to hear about We Suck and Sarnia in a minute because they have a terrible Mike Bradley odor problem down there. And I also want to know about site plan. Can we regulate asphalt in 300 feet in the driveway? Can we regulate a row of cedars or pines down both sides, totally enclose it through site plan agreement, if we can get site plan agreement?
So there are three questions there. With regards to site plan and planting trees around the lagoon storage facility, that is something that would be possible. The entrance permit is regulated by the Ministry of Transportation, and I'm not qualified to speak or offer any comments with regards to the comparison of issues and the Mitchell sewage treatment plant.
Rich, I said I wouldn't throw you under the bus tonight, but I'm going to. Would you like to come up and explain how our operation works, our sewage treatment and our lagoons?
Richard Wright is our environmental services coordinator for the municipality of West Perth. I'll just introduce him while he's doing his coming in from the bullpen.
So, there's a big difference between the lagoons out there in Dublin and the lagoons here in town. The municipality, the town of Mitchell operates an extended duration sewage treatment plant. So anything that goes, any of the wastewater that comes in goes through the mechanical plant prior to going out to the lagoons. But that's kind of a misnomer on its own. We have a peak overflow cell, which allows diversion of incoming wastes to a L-shaped cell out of the sewage plant. And that's done during high flow events. So spring melts, extreme weather conditions. And that stuff comes right back into the plant as soon as the event ends. The other cell that we have is a sludge holding cell. So our winter sludge holding cell. So the process to the sewage plant is you have the biological process. To maintain the biological process, you have to waste a certain amount of the bio or the organisms. That creates a sludge product, much like a biosolid, or it is a biosolid. We have aerobic digesters. So it spends 240 days in our aerobic digesters. It's turned into digested sludge, and it's held in the sludge holding lagoon. So that the process is different. During this mid to late spring and late summer, late fall, we do sludge application. So the sludge is taken out of the sludge holding cell and land applied to the appropriately approved NASM sites. Any other questions?
Well, Deputy Mayor mentioned about Safina, and that product does come in, but it's treated, I guess.
Yeah, that goes to the treatment process itself.
That's good.
Can I go back there?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Mr. Burns, do you want to add anything to that at this point in time? Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councilor Jankowski.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I've covered the odor issue or concerns, and I've tried to address the integrity of the clay liner. So now I want to talk about water quality issues, concerns in our West Perth. The strategic plan for West Perth, we identified water quality as a prime objective, maintaining that water quality. I've heard the concerns from the audience about surface water, contamination from the surface water, runoff and so forth, and also concerns about contamination of the drinking water, the groundwater. So nowhere in this presentation have I seen your hydrogeological study. And what that is the study of the movement of the groundwater below the surface. So I don't know which way, does anybody know which way the water's moving in that area, what direction, and in what quantity, what volume. And I don't see, connected to that, I don't see the spills containment training document. It's referenced in the submission package, but it says it's available for further review. That should have been part of the package front and center, because if you don't know which way the water's flowing, then how do you know how to set up a spill containment system that will prevent the surface spill from getting into the groundwater? And how do you know how to intercept contaminated groundwater before it gets into people's drinking water supply? 20 years ago, for those that pretty well everyone in this room will remember 20 years ago or thereabouts, a lot of people spent a considerable amount of money drilling wells, because it was the Ministry of the Environment that came up with a new regulation about testing drinking water. It forced people to stop sharing wells and start drilling their own wells. So what I'm getting at is these people have spent a large sum of money to protect their drinking water. And now this presentation tonight, this is why they have so many questions about their drinking water, because they've invested a lot of time and effort to protect it. And as the one person pointed out, once it gets contaminated, the Ministry of the Environment takes over. we don't have any control around this table. Not very much control, as we can only influence, but we don't make the final decisions. And that's a problem. So if someone could answer the question about the hydrogeological study and how it relates to the spill containment plan, I would like to know those answers. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, there were a number of technical studies that were submitted as part of the ECA application, including a hydrogeology report, which are all available within the ECA document and submission. There was Appendix D of the technical reports that included the hydrogen study. I don't know I'm not an engineer that can speak to the details of the hydrogen report, but one was done and approved by the Ministry of Environment.
Okay, thank you. Colleen, you have one more point? I kind of want to wrap it up, but I don't want to cut anybody off short now.
It was, thank you again for the opportunity. It was one of the points I passed over in the documents supplied by Bartel, page 16. They clearly state stormwater flows westward towards Perth County 180. That means it flows from the lagoon towards the village of Dublin. They also mentioned 2 creeks on the property that they determined may need to be rerouted or filled in. This suggests water patterns that exist in that area. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands going up. Question? Go ahead.
Well, what I hope is quick. Just something that nobody's really, well, we've touched on it briefly, but what about traffic? So we've talked about 20 trucks in and all day, 6 days a week, and however many trucks that are going to come out. Has there been a traffic flow study done? Any discussion with MTO about a turning lane? Anything that's not going to bottleneck traffic on an MTO highway through Dublin?
Through pre-consultation, traffic study was determined not to be required. When we spoke about 20 trucks, I believe that was for whether like the capacity for the entire site would, is that right? Like 20 trucks could hold the capacity of the site coming in. So I don't believe in a worst case scenario there would be 20 trucks entering the site. I believe we looked at the volume more like 9 trucks in a worst case hour, 9 trucks coming in and out.
Yeah. So the way that we operate, when we move material out, it's typically 3 or 4 trucks that do a project for us. Loading time typically takes about a half an hour. So that's 2 trucks an hour. On site, there's parking available for 4 or 5 trucks. So there will not be any trucks parked on the road. Everything that would be coming in would be on the site as they're waiting to load.
Okay, I think, go ahead, Nicholas.
I was wondering if Susanna could comment or run us through your thought process or Perth County Planning's thought process on this zoning bylaw change, because you had indicated that it would be of agriculture use, but that might be the secondary use, but I would say the primary going into it would some biodigest state, and you listed off the number of communities like Lagoon and Dorchester and Thorndale. So how did your thinking go from, in this case, human waste as an agriculture use to come to the zoning bylaw?
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor. The question for the planning question is with regards to evaluating the proposal as to whether or not it's considered an agricultural, commercial, or industrial use. The provincial policy statement and the county official plan both provide direction for considering agricultural, commercial, or industrial uses. So because the biosolid material that would be stored at the site is proposed to be land applied, that is considered an agricultural, commercial, or industrial use. It's the land application that allows us to get to the conclusion that it's related to agriculture.
All right. Anybody else? I would kind of like to wrap this up. Okay. Do you wish to make a summary at this time at all?
No, thank you.
Sure, go ahead. I thought you said I would like to. Sorry. Okay, well then, I think that concludes the public meeting for this zoning bylaw amendment. I would like to thank those in attendance for their comments. Certainly, there's been a lot of information exchanged here tonight. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment, the notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act in a 20-day appeal period to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So with that, motion would be that the Council Municipality of West Perth now closes this public meeting at 9:01 p.m. and reconvenes to regular council. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Duck and Councillor Rose, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you for coming out tonight.
Walter, would you mind commenting on when we might consider this a bylaw?
Want to come on that, Dan?
Pending planning's review of the file and their ability to make a recommendation. Council, we'd be looking at November 7th. So.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess here right now. Come back. So we just have to wait just a second until we know that we're live and online here, and they'll give us the word. We hope you you enjoyed your wait here tonight.
Yes. Potentially, yes.
Dan, when we're on. We're good to go? Okay, all right. So, yes, we have Brian Leaney and Daryl Arnold from Enbridge Gas with us tonight. And there are a couple things that they want to talk to us about, I guess, but we have a natural gas expansion presentation. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys and you can take it from there.
So thank you, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Brian Lenny, Senior Advisor, Municipal Affairs for Enbridge Gas. Daryl Arnold with me, Manager of Operations. So yes, we do have two separate presentations. Daryl will be covering the franchise renewal. I'll be covering natural gas expansion. So you may recall this time last year, I was at council actually virtually to talk about natural gas expansion. We have some updates now to share. So I thought it'd be good, especially with recent news from the province, to come again and explain that. Next slide, please. So actually, you should. So currently in West Perth, the map you see on the screen is a customer density map. So this indicates where natural gas is in the municipality. We have just under 2,300 customers and just under 122 kilometers of pipe. Vast majority of the gas primarily is in Mitchell and surrounding area, although there is some to the south as well. Next slide, please. Next slide as well. So just to give a bit of background on natural gas expansion and how it's possible. So every connection to the gas system in the province must pass an economic test under the rules and regulations of the Ontario Energy Board. That's our regulator. Basically, the whole point of those tests is to hold existing customers harmless. So if you're a customer right now in Mitchell, the whole point is that if someone else who's not a customer wants to become part of the natural gas system, you're held neutral to their cost to connect. And if the connection does not meet that test, the customer has to pay up front to connect. And this is often a disincentive. We've likely seen many examples of this in the past where you likely heard from constituents who got a quote from Enbridge that was, 100 or 150,000 to connect. And that is a rule of the Ontario Energy Board. So if you wish to connect, you have to pay that cost up front. And there was no, and I'll explain that, there was no payment term available, and that has changed, which is a positive. So in some instances where a community or group of potential customers is far away from our current infrastructure, the option exists to connect through a monthly surcharge. So I'll discuss those two specific things. So successive governments have implemented since 2015 to 2016 expansion program, been under various names. The bottom line right now, though, under the current government, it's called the Natural Gas Expansion Program. Next slide, please. So the recent history there is that in 2020, you may recall that we applied to the OEB and the provincial government under the NGP to serve the Moncton area. This application was supported with letters of support from both West Perth and North Perth. So phase 2 was a $1 a month charge on every natural gas customer's bill across the province. And then those in the Moncton area if it was successful, would have paid an expansion surcharge on their bill, like a rider on their bill, for the specific area of expansion for a defined time period. So the government received over 200 applications representing $2 billion in cost. And in the end, ended up funding 27 projects for about 240 million. Certainly there was a recognition from the province that there is a lot of interest out there, and I know you're hearing that from your constituents. The provincial government in the end was the one who made the decisions on which project went forward. Just to give some context here, so 240 million roughly was awarded. About 100 million of that went to one project, which was Bach Cajun, which is about 7,000 customers or so. So a large chunk of that 240 million actually went to one project primarily. So unfortunately, the province did not select the Moncton area. So that leads to the question of what's next, and that's the good news to share. So back in April, end of April, the Minister of Energy sent a letter to municipalities that submitted projects that were not selected for phase 2. So that will include for Moncton, announcing there's going to be a phase 3. So that was actually contingent on the budget passing. So the budget has now passed. And it indicated at the time that the consultation began in the fall of 2022. So the update there is we're seeing a lot of strong signals. And in the past few weeks from the government, there was a announcement actually about the Bruner expansion in Perth East just a week or 2 weeks ago. And the minister actually specifically said that consultation for phase 3 is going to start imminently. So we don't know what imminently means. It could mean tomorrow or it could mean 6 weeks from now, but we do know it's expected to start soon. And that will really be the next opportunity for us to submit projects to fund areas like Moncton or other areas that, and I think Mr. Walcom is here today for submitting the interest for Russell. That will be the opportunity to submit again and make the case for those projects specifically. But that's not the only thing that can be done. After the next slide, please. So when I talked at the start of the presentation, I mentioned there was the disincentive. So if you're someone and you had to pay a cost up front, it often was the disincentive. So what we did was Enbridge Gas approached the Ontario Energy Board, received approval at the end of November 2020 for what was called at the time temporary connection surcharge. It's now called the expansion surcharge. So this is where, as mentioned, situations where the cost to attach the gas system is not economically feasible at the OEB regularly approved rates, we can do an expansion surcharge instead. So what that basically means is we do have approval now for short main extension. So we're to look at that map that was on a previous slide. This would be for customers who are really, really, really close to our existing main near Mitchell or near Dublin, any of those areas. This is talking about expanding the system incrementally from where our existing gas lines are. And we don't have to wait for a phase 3 from the provincial government to do that. Phase 3 from the provincial government, if we think about it, is likely best suited for the communities like Russelldale or like Moncton, who are far away from existing main, where they would not be eligible to pass an economic test under this expansion surcharge that we have. So we're looking at really two mechanisms right now that we're advancing as a company. One is waiting for the next phase, phase 3 of the natural gas expansion program from the province. Number 2 is advancing short incremental expansions of the system off of our existing assets in West Perth. So the phase 3 is driven by the province, and we'll wait to see what and when they come through with their recommendations and what their process is going to be. The other one is driven by Enbridge Gas and by customers. So what's critical for the expansion surcharge for those customers who are maybe just 5, 10, 100 meters away from our gas system right now is to register on the enbridgegas.com website their interest, and then it immediately goes into our economic model to figure out if they do not have to pay up front, and they can instead pay that over a certain period of time. I believe that is it for my presentation. And certainly on the expansion, happy to take any questions there. Will be covering franchising.
So just to recap, because I do get calls from time to time. So say, and I'm just going to pick north of Mitchell on Highway 23. There's some hog barns there, some sow barns that probably I'm guessing are on propane now, but could be on natural gas. So what you should do is encourage them to log onto your website and get registered and give the information, and then you can go from there. Because there were, like we're looking at probably a mile and a quarter, 2.5 miles to expand out there.
That is absolutely correct. And for those customers, them registering in the past, and maybe they got a quote from Enbridge in the past when they heard from Unigas in the past, maybe it was years ago, that was a quote for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference now is when they register, go through that test to see, does it qualify for the expansion surcharge? Do they have to pay up front? If they don't, then it's a determination, and this is the critical piece here. is 40 years or less in terms of how long it takes to pay it back is the test. So we run the economic model and those hog barns are at 39.5 years. Project can go forward so long as the customer agrees. And what they'll do for 39.5 years is pay a monthly fee on their bill. But it's not dependent on waiting for the provincial government or anything like that. But that's the critical piece. So and this was something that we did talk to the government about, but they were very firm, was even if it's 40 years in a day, not eligible under the expansion surcharge. The critical thing for us is making costs as low as we can to facilitate those improvements.
Right. And my understanding, and I think I got this from a Zoom meeting that I had with you guys, grain elevators are great. They use natural gas, but it's a very seasonable thing. And you want something that's going to use natural gas all year long, right?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I think, we have quite a few grain dryers on us, particularly up in the part of the problem. We would certainly want to see those requests too.
Yeah, and I know there's more that would love to be on your system. So, yeah, okay, good. Any questions from council? Councilor Chantowski.
Thanks, Brian and Daryl, for your presentation and your update since your last visit from Enbridge in August of last year, or maybe it was September. But going back to the economic test, if I'm understanding this right, there needs to be a critical mass in the terms of number of customers and the volume of gas that could be sold to get, like, to meet that 40-year timeline. And whether it's I'm thinking more of the phase 3 submissions to the province. Like what I'm trying to ask is, should we be going out as council, as a municipality, going out and trying to organize an effort to get people to sign a petition or make a collective submission and say, here, we've got a list of names from Mitchell, Logan, Fullerton, Hibbert. These people want gas. So how do we get the ball rolling to sort this out? Is that the best way to get it started, or what are your thoughts on that?
So great questions. And there's 3 really critical pieces here. So your first part there was, does critical mass matter for those short main extensions? We talked about the expansion surcharge. The answer is no. We actually have a website that, I don't have a link on me right now, but we actually have a website where we list every single expansion surcharge project we've connected. And you'll see some there that are 2 customers, some that are 1, some that are 15. What really matters is distance to main and constructability in those cases. So I use the example that you could have a customer who is extremely close to our natural gas system, but they're on the other side of a river. So economics would not work in that case. But for our specific, what Enbridge is advancing on our own, separate from the province expansion surcharge, customer density doesn't matter. It's all about constructability and how close you are incrementally to the main. We look at the other program, though, the one that the government funds, the expansion or the natural gas expansion program, to your second point. The province, what we've seen and what we saw in the last round, they really are looking for those areas that would have no chance under any Ontario Energy Board test to connect. Moncton's a good example where it's so far distance-wise. I think it's 6 to 7 kilometers, perhaps more, from existing natural gas main that would never pass an economic test on its own. So the province is looking for those grouping of customers. In the last round, they indicated that they really were looking for the maximum to maximize customer. And what we've heard from the province this time around, what Minister Smith, I think, indicated in Bruner the other day, was they're looking at a program this time around being kind of a mix of connecting as many farm operations as they can, and also connecting as many villages, hamlets, areas, collection of people, collection of homes that they can. So a bit of a mix this time around, whereas last time it was all about Bobcaygeon, for example, which is 7,000 customers, trying to get as many connected as possible. And then just to close on your third point there,
think a critical thing, just to reiterate, because I don't want to give anyone false hope, is that if you are a customer right now in West Perth or anywhere in Perth County, and you're 20, 25 kilometers away from natural gas system right now, the chances of you being connected are still quite low, because you won't qualify in the expansion surcharge that the board has approved. And it's unlikely the province would extend the 25 kilometers just to pick up a couple of customers. So I do want to make sure that folks are level setting and that folks are aware that if you are very far away, it's still unlikely that you will be connected to the system, unless you're willing to pay upfront a order of cost.
When Mike Tam and I met with you in the Good Roads in March, whenever we went there, Mike, the town of Carlingford, it's got about 25 or 30 homes. It's 2.5 miles from that main line that goes in my back area. Would that be which one would that come under? The availability, or like we're going to talk about Russelldale and possibly Fullerton or something? Yeah. Which program would it best come under?
It's a great question. That all depends on us running the economics on it, right? So if we ran the economics and it showed we could do it on our own under the economic test and pass the board's test, we can move forward with it. But I will say that it never hurts. If, let's say, the province opens natural gas phase 3 tomorrow, it never hurts to submit multiple. I give the example of Municipality of West Gray. So they submitted multiple projects last time around. Newstead, there's a couple other communities they submitted. They actually ended up getting funding for one, but it put the other ones out there on the radar of the province, right? So it's really, my recommendation is let's take a two-pronged approach, which we can work on our side at Enbridge to see if we can do this on our own, but it never hurts in the meantime. Let's say the province opens it up tomorrow to submit multiple and see what you get. And that solves the problem right off the bat.
Anyone else? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Just to close, I'll say that we'll be in touch with Jeff and with Dan as soon as we hear about phase 3 open.
Yeah, Steve, you're sitting in here, and we do have your letter on the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I'm usually loud. Sorry about that. My question is very similar to House here. What's the best way to go forward here for my community and anybody close to me is, I know this isn't going to happen tomorrow or whatever. We gotta get the ball rolling. What's the best way to do it so that we get on the radar?
So yeah, just similar to what said to the deputy mayor, I think the best course of action, my recommendation would be submit Russelldale, submit Moncton, submit multiple, see what the province funds. But in the meantime, Enbridge, we can do our work on our side and see what we can fund without, or we can do on our own. But it never hurts to submit multiple. I mean, I think West Gray is the perfect example of that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And now the franchise agreement.
Yes, franchise agreement. Thank you, Brian. And again, thank you, your worship at council, for having us here this evening. I think it's a different presentation. And if you could just advance up to slide 5, because there's a little bit of slides that are saying. Next one. Oh, thank you very much.
I'll just advise we'll jump ahead in the agenda then at the mayor's direction, because we recognize you gentlemen had a long wait.
Oh, yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. So natural gas municipal franchise agreements, that's the other item that Brian right here is going to speak to. So I'm going to go through a little bit of what the franchise agreement is and go over the process for the renewal. So first, natural gas franchise, the means by which Enbridge delivers safe, reliable, and affordable natural gas to our customers, including here in the municipality of West Perth. It's an agreement between the municipality that wants natural gas distribution installed within the municipality boundaries and a natural gas distributor that wants to provide that service. The municipal franchise agreement is a process that must be submitted to the Ontario Energy Board for approval under the Municipal Franchise Act. And the terms and conditions of the municipal franchise agreement are set by Ontario Energy Board. So prior to 1988, franchise agreements were between municipalities and natural gas utilities were negotiated on an individual basis.
And starting in 1988, a model franchise agreement was formulated through the Ontario Energy Board, working with municipalities and different natural gas utilities throughout the province. And it was again updated, in the most recent update was in 2000. So the municipal franchise agreement provides a template to guide natural gas distributors and municipalities with the terms and conditions that the Ontario Energy Board generally finds reasonable. And so covers items like emergency response, work in roadways, pipeline relocation and decommissioning, and other various responsibilities that would be through the natural operation maintenance of the natural gas pipeline. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history of franchise, natural gas franchises in West Perth. So you can see the last franchise renewal occurred on August 18th in 2003, and that would have been on the former Union Gas Limited. And that franchise in 2003 was the same, was the 2000 franchise version of the franchise agreement, and is also the same franchise agreement that the proposed this evening for renewal. If you go to the next slide, please. So of course, the question may be, why are we here to see franchise, existing franchise renewal is in place until August? Well, it is a long process. That's in the Ontario Energy Board, about 6 to 12 months process. And the first step is the natural gas distributor engaging the municipality, which Brian and I have done earlier this fall, to kick off the process. And then the next step is, we come to council, which is where we are this evening, to talk about the process and have council for consideration to pass a approval through a resolution to proceed with the franchise renewal. From there, the municipality will put a bylaw related to the franchise agreement through the first and second readings, where this then would be turned back to Under Gas, and we would start working with the Ontario Energy Board on the hearing process. So if you could put the next slide, please. And this is really the part that takes quite a bit of time. So the role of the Ontario Energy Board here is to adjudicate the application. So they will set up a hearing process with the public, issue notices through newspapers and public hearings. And they'll look to collect evidence and comments and inquiries from the public and anyone that would wish to provide information to the hearing. From then, OEB will consider all the evidence before it, and certainly including providing any questions on the evidence, any written submissions relating to the hearing. And from there, they'll make a determination whether or not to approve the municipal franchise renewal. If approved, the Ontario Energy Board will issue a decision and order granting approval of the franchise agreement. We would then return back to the municipality and forward on that decision order for consideration by council again. And if council were to approve that order and decision through another council meeting and reading of the bylaw, the new franchise agreement will be in place for another 20 years. So I think that's the presentation there, and Brian and I are certainly going to take on some questions regarding about the franchise renewal program.
Okay, any questions? Oh, Dean, sorry, go ahead.
So the OEB adjudication process, like, what's the timeline there? Like, how soon will they receive the application, and how quickly do they turn around and provide a decision? Like,
so as soon as we received the first and second bylaw reading from the clerk, we received that document package, we submitted it immediately. The OEB, their timeline all depends on their current workload. They're indicated, yeah, it could be in the 6 to 12 month range, but the OEB will take a look at it for maybe about a month, and then you'll see an order come through to Enbridge, to put notices in the newspaper, and invite the public to comment, and that's when the process starts.
Yeah, I'd say the most recent one would be closer to 6 months.
Yeah. So I think you're
Any other questions this time? Okay, I want to thank you for coming. I really do. I know you were put through quite a bit tonight, and this is the way it worked out. So do appreciate you coming and what you've shared with us tonight. So thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the agenda the way it came out now, and we'll deal with that a little later on in the evening. So the next item up is the planning department, which we don't have anything. So then chief building official, and Matt has been hanging around here all night as well. So Matt, the August and September permit summary, give us all the good news, sir.
Thank you, your worship, members of council and staff. So you can pull up the report. So the first one we've got up there is the August report. 26 permits issued, only 2 zoning certificates issued. Good amount of agricultural on there. The one to notice is the first one up there, fast food restaurant, which is actually McDonald's. So that one was a little while coming. And scroll down. So for September, 20 permits, 9 zoning certificates issued. Again, a good amount of agricultural. Nothing really exceptional in there. No more McDonald's or any other fast food joints like that. And then the third quarter summary, you can see that our numbers are down a little bit. The construction value is quite high though. And the new housing starts are higher, not compared to last year, but the previous 2 years. And I think that has to do with the amount of service lots that we have available. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Matt on that? No? Good.
Really?
Good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Appreciate you sticking around.
No worries.
All right, moving on. Oh, I guess we should do this. Recommendation is the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the August permit summary as information. It should be August and September, I believe. 2 months. So we have a mover. Councillor Harold, seconded Councillor Duck, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item then is librarian. I'm going to apologize to Rosemary as well, because you have to drive back to Kitchener, don't you? Cambridge, yes, yes. Well, you can see how our little community works here, eh?
The library board met on September 27, and I believe you have the meeting minutes, a monthly statistics report, and the CEO quarterly highlights in front of you for your review. Just some very brief highlights from that meeting. The library will adopt the land acknowledgement submitted to council by the Heritage and Culture Committee once it has been approved by council. And this land acknowledgement is going to be incorporated into the library's respect and acknowledgement policy. In terms of capital projects, new carpet was installed in the building in August and painting was finished earlier this month. The new carpet is in keeping with the municipality's asset management policy regarding the products and equipment in its municipal buildings. The library board approved an exam proctoring service and a flat fee of $25 per exam. And this is very much in keeping with other public libraries that offer this service in Ontario. And it is in support of the library's mission to support lifelong learning. And finally, the board approved updates to the library's code of conduct and human resources management policies. And these policies are all on the library's website for public review. Are there any questions at all?
Any questions for Rosemary? Okay, very good, very good. Do you have a recommendation here? That Municipality of West Perth accept the West Perth Public Library Board meeting report as information. Councillor Bell. Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, next item then is the Enbridge gas franchise agreement that we just dealt with. So it is there. I don't think anybody had any questions with regards to that. So the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth accept the Enbridge Gas franchise agreement report for information, and that the Council of Municipality of West Perth approve the draft bylaw and franchise agreement attached hereto, and following second reading, authorize the submission thereof to the Ontario Energy Board for approval pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchise Act, and that the Council of Municipality of West Perth request the Ontario Energy Board make an order declaring and directing that the asset of the municipal electors to the attached draft bylaw and franchise agreement pertaining to the Corporation of Municipality of West Perth is not necessary pursuant to the provisions of Section 9, subsection 4 of the Municipal Franchise Act. There. Now, we have a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, correspondence. We have the New Horizons information there from John Nader. And we were going to pass that along, I think, to Abby for because we certainly have the room in here now that we could do some seniors work. So I think that'll work in quite well. And then the Royal Canadian Legion, they Remembrance Day. And do you want to highlight anything on that, Dan? There was two emails came out. One, I think, with from the Legion, and did you send one out after that? Or am I dreaming? We don't have as many wreaths as what they had said, wasn't that it?
The first one I would just highlight is an invitation to all of council. And I believe last year we weren't clear on the invitation and what was happening, but I'll chalk that up to COVID and not to the anything done by the organization. The other correspondence is in the parade.
Okay, all right, yep, okay. We have one more meeting before Remembrance Day, so we can discuss who does what, I guess, for that. So the recommendation then is that the Municipality of West Perth accept correspondence as information. Deputy Mayor Wright and Councillor Vink, all those in favor? That's carried. And then we do have the request from the Mitchell Lions Club for Santa Claus Parade. And it returns after I believe a 2-year hiatus. Any discussion on that? The recommendation is that the Municipality of West Perth approve the request for the Mitchell Lions Club to host the 2022 Santa Claus Parade on December the 2nd, beginning at 7 o'clock at Upper Thames Elementary School and proceeding west on Francis Street, then south onto St. David Street, turning west on Ontario Road, and then south at the lights onto St. George Street. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Murray and a seconder, Councillor Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Bylaws. We have a couple here. Bylaw 65 is to authorize the franchise agreement. Did I miss one? Council report. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of here. Mobility bus. Sorry. And the minutes of the October 5th. Murray, that's I think you or David, doesn't matter.
I was at the meeting. So the recommendation is going forward tonight, and at the meeting of the mobility bus, there is a discussion around the annual contribution of the municipality to the mobility bus program and the agreement. I will state that it's always been $12,000 since inception. It has never increased, and price of fuel has been hitting the bottom line. So there was a recommendation at that meeting to bring forward a request to council to up the increase from 12 to 15. We are in an agreement with them, so we would have to go through opening the agreement and making some amendments. But if all parties were in agreement, it could be pretty quick. So we brought it forward to council to see what council's wishes are, if they wish to approve that or if they wish to bring that forward as part of a separate budgeting process.
Questions or comments on that?
Yeah, could we also have at the same time answer, is that gas tax dollars that we're taking from a different fund toward the mobility bus in this case?
Gas tax dollars all go to mobility bus, unless I'm incorrect there. I'm CAO and see the definition nodding his head. He's got the information. So all of our gas tax dollars do go there. I can bring those amounts up if council wishes to hear.
Or just when we're working on the agreement or something. It doesn't have to be now.
Anybody else? Is there a reason that everybody didn't move up? That it's just the municipality that's increased?
I think we're the main supporter and main funder of the program, and there are buses, but I will just add that we received $34,244 from the province, and those funds were forwarded in June of this year. We obviously had our contribution of 12 as per agreement, and the remaining provincial funding of 13,414 will be forwarded once received from the province. That's in regards to gas tax.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, the motion that we have here is that the municipality of West Perth direct the clerk to amend the Mitchell area mobility bus agreement to increase the annual contribution from 12,000 to 15. We have a mover and second for that, Councillor Rhodes and Councillor Murray. Any further discussion? All those in favor? There was a question?
Well, I was just wondering, is there anything else that we needed to address in the agreement at the same time? If we're making some changes?
Or we can bring the agreement back to council, but we've had a quick review of it and overview, and there are some, I would argue, structural. We don't have representatives from every ward on the committee right now, and that's something we might want to look to amend, is streamlining it to more efficient governance.
Okay, I think we're partway through there. We got it moved and seconded. No, that's fine. So all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, and down to the bylaws. We have bylaw 65 to authorize the franchise agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth and Enbridge. So the recommendation is there that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth give first and second reading to bylaw 65, 2022. We have a mover and seconder for two readings. Councillor Bell, Councillor Trankowski, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. The next bylaw is a zoning bylaw amendment for bylaw 100 as amended by property described as lot 21, plan 366, known as 197 and 199 Colton Drive, Mitchell Ward. And the recommendation is that Municipality of West Perth gives first, second, and third and final reading to bylaw zoning 269, 2022, the 17th day of October. We have a mover and seconder for that one. Councillor Rose and Councillor Harold. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is also carried. Upcoming events, 24th is election day. Wish those that are there good luck. All the best. The open house is on November the 3rd. And then our next regular meeting will be November the 7th. And just with regards to the zoning amendment that we had for Dublin, Suzanne will have a recommendation back to us probably for that meeting so that we can deal with it at that time. And you've got a week or two to think, mull over what the information was here tonight. Any notices of motion? We don't have a closed session tonight, I don't believe. So the confirmatory bylaw would be next, and that is bylaw 66, 2022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Corporation of Municipality of West Perth be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Duck, Councillor Tam, all those in favor? That is carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn that we, Municipality of West Perth, adjourn the council meeting at 9:49 PM. Got a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Tam, Councillor Rose, all in favor? We are adjourned.